Japan, the land of sushi, anime, and Alice in Borderland. If you don't know what Alice in Borderland is, stop this video right now, add it to your Netflix queue. It's so good. Moving on. Japan is also one of the biggest global suppliers of great cars. From gas-saving econoboxes to twin-turbo sports cars that will melt your face. Any car enthusiast worth his salt has lusted after a Japanese sports car one time in his life. And the best part of Japanese cars is they typically punch well above their weight, standing their own amongst cars worth 3 times their price. Even if they can't take down an Italian supercar from the factory, with a little work, a lot of Japanese cars can slay supercars. And right now, I'm gonna tell you about 7 of them that should be on your radar. If you're new here, I'm the Squid, this is Ideal Media, we talk about cool cars and stuff, so hit that subscribe button and let's go. Now the first car on this list is a pretty obvious one, but it should still be on the list, even if I think it's personally a little overrated. It's the 2JZ Packin' smooth bodyline sports car with just insane, unreal used market value. You know it, you love it, we're talking about the Mark IV Supra. The Supra is everywhere in tuner culture. It's basically the iPhone of modified cars. From the roads of Mount Haruna, underground car meets, and notoriously feared at drag strips, the Mark IV Supra is kind of the do-it-all tuner car. The legendary 2JZ block is strong enough and hardy enough to handle up to 800 horsepower without much modification. That means, unlike other tuner cars, the Toyota Supra can be tuned to insane numbers without much work on the bottom end, saving you time and money to smoke supercars. The Supra also has some pretty intimidating looks that back up its supercar slaying performance. The design follows classic sports car ideology. A long front hood packing a big engine under it, followed by a smooth swooping cockpit to a smooth tail end. You just can't go wrong with the Supra. That is, until you want to buy one. How much do they cost? That is where things get pretty complicated. A premium example of a Mark IV Supra today is gonna start at around 50 grand, and usually go for a lot more than that, like up to 3 times as much as that. The Supra has become a cult classic, and car values have taken notice. So today, you're pressed with the issue of, do I buy a used 90s Supra or a brand new Mark V for about the same price? So choose wisely. All right, I mean, the Supra was the winner of the JDM horsepower wars. It's kind of the obvious first choice as a giant killing tuner. Well, this next car I would call the runner-up in the JDM horsepower war. What do you get when you let the classic 240Z from Nissan marinate for a few generations? You get the 300ZX twin turbo. The 240Z is one of the all-time greatest cars to ever come out of Japan. And for more info on it, check out this video I made up here. And it's prolific. With its many generations ranging over 50 years, you probably know someone in your life who has had one. Now over time, the Z car started as a light little sports car and grew into a luxurious grand tourer kind of thing with the Z32 generation. But it ain't no slouch. The Z32 300ZX is awesome. Stock, it came with a twin turbo V6 punching out over 300 horsepower. Depending on what dyno you run it on. And it'll get you up to highway speeds in only 5 seconds, which in 1990 was, unheard of. And it's the first car to be designed fully by computers. But what that means is its engine bay has a little bit of packaging problems, meaning that the Z32 is going to be an absolute nightmare to work on or modify. But luckily, you're rich, and if you throw enough money at a car, well, it'll all work out. You can push a Z32 up to 500 or 600 horsepower if you have enough cash in your pocket. And if you cashed in on that GameSpot stock, maybe you could afford to build something like the Devil Z, a drag strip demon that really proves what the 300ZX is capable of. All told, the 300ZX Z32 generation is a complicated but fantastic car to own, and is absolutely one of my favorite 90s sports cars. I owned one, and I loved every second of driving that thing. And luckily, unlike the Supra, you won't have to sell your children to own one. A decent twin-turbo, 5-speed 300ZX is gonna run you around 15 grand. You know, like a tenth of a good Supra. And all that money you saved not buying a Supra and not buying into the Supra hype, you can spend on building that thing to insane horsepower numbers. And, fun fact, you can brag to your friends that you actually own a car that has the same headlights as a Lamborghini. It's true. Look it up. Now the 300ZX is not the only great triangle to come out of the 90s. Do you have a sudden craving for Doritos? What's your favorite flavor of Dorito, by the way? Let me know down below. And after you've done that, strap in because we're gonna be talking about the FD RX-7. That's right, the Mazda RX-7, which replaces your typical piston engine with some spinning geometry. This is gonna be the loud part of the video, you guys. And it's that triangular concoction under the hood that makes the RX-7 so special. It is insanely high revving and is able to make tons of horsepower even though it's just a tiny little thing. The infamous rotary engine boosted the RX-7 to 90s sports car fame as soon as it came out back in 1993. And with an up to 8,000 RPM redline, you will be screaming past all your buddies in their slower sports cars. And if somebody complains about all the noise, just let them know you're taking good care of your car, because it is actually recommended to redline your rotary regularly to clear carbon buildup. And of course, this is a list of Japanese tuning icons, so we have to talk about the RX-7's build potential here. Head to any drift event in Japan, from amateur to pro, and you will likely see an RX-7 out there slaying tires. For good reason. The RX-7 is purpose-built for punching above its weight class. With the right turbo combination, you can see upwards of 700 horsepower out of these. And headphone users beware, if you stretch the red line up above that 8,000 RPM limit, you get this. So yes, you can build your very own tire-slaying, supercar smoking, high horsepower, triangle-powered machine. Just have a few mechanics as your friends, because rotary engines are temperamental to say the least. You're gonna get very familiar with the term apex seal. Now onto the price. From our research, good examples for an FD model with a 5-speed are floating around the $40,000 number. Which, yes, I know, you guys are all cheap here. You wanna slay triangles for cheap? Go ahead and shop for the earlier model FC. And if you want to get really cheap, get one that's non-turbo, swap the motor in for less than you'd pay for a turbo model at this point. Now, so far, we've looked at drag strip kings and drift monsters. So let's cover all of our bases and talk about something that you can take off-road. This is your JDM Red Pill, the Lancer Evolution 9. The Lancer has been in the Mitsubishi lineup for a long time. It started as a regular old commuter car, about as special as a Camry, while its bigger brother, the Galant, was having all of the fun. You see, Mitsubishi had been using these large sedans in competition for quite some time, and they had a pretty decent amount of success with it. However, the rules in the World Rally Championships started to change, requiring a smaller car to fit within the regulation. Thus the birth of the Lancer Evolution. As with most other motorsports, homologation rules required that the manufacturer make a street car version of their race car, which is maybe one of the best rules in all of racing because it created the Lancer Evolution for the streets. 9 generations, and the Lancer had evolved into what most people would consider its best form. This is the most recognizable and most widely known generation of the Lancer Evo. With full-time all-wheel drive and an ACD system to distribute power, the Evo 9 came out of the factory with performance in mind. Right out of the gate, the Lancer Evolution was able to keep up with a lot of supercars and even smoke some of them on the track. Seriously, if you haven't seen the Top Gear review of the Lancer Evo, you need to. And pretty easily, most tuned Evos will run around 500 horsepower with a few mods. But it's not unusual to see some of these pushing upwards of 700. And this is one of the cars on the list that does not sacrifice practicality to be that fast. I mean, it's got 4 doors and a trunk. So if you want to light up a Ferrari on the way to hockey practice with all your gear in the trunk, the Lancer Evo 9 is definitely the wise decision. It's also a wise decision because they're actually going up in value because they've been discontinued. So get on Auto Tempest and search for a Lancer Evo for you, like this one we found for only 33,000 bucks, which makes this one of the most performance per dollar cars probably in existence. Now, if the Lancer Evo is the red pill, our next car up is the blue pill. That's right, we're talking about a rivalry decades in the making. We're talking about the WRX STI. Just like the Lancer Evo, the WRX STI is a rally car legend. In fact, Subaru went through the same development progress to get to the STI. They'd long been dominating the rally world with the Subaru legacy, but those darn regulations meant that they had to make something smaller and lighter. Meaning Subaru switched to the Impreza platform, added a turbo, pumped in some rally spec goodness into it, and the STI was born. Now, several generations later, the Subaru WRX STI has long outlived the Evo it rivaled. Subaru has even promised to continue making the STI for years to come. And one of my favorite facts about the Subaru WRX STI is it actually came as a wagon for a long time. Sadly, the newer generations don't. And if you ask me, you're not a real car enthusiast unless you love fast wagons. Now, anybody that's been watching Ideal for any amount of time knows that there are a ton of internet videos out there showing STIs destroying tires and destroying dirt roads and streets and curbs and themselves. The WRX STI is capable of doing pretty much anything. You want to take it off-road, you want to slam it, you want to make it go really fast on a drag strip, you want to build a track monster, you want to drift it, or if you're insane and you want to just keep it stock, The Subaru WRX STI is the jack of all trades, and thankfully it's one of the most widely available cars on this list, and so it's pretty cheap on the used market. Most STI models, pretty much despite whatever generation they are, will run you around 20 grand. But sadly, they're not as much of an investment like the Evo because those are appreciating, so you might lose a little money in a few years. Now let's keep the all-wheel drive theme going with our next car. This one doesn't have any history in rally racing, but it does have plenty of history in Group A racing in Japan in the 90s. We're talking about the beast from the east, the son of Godzilla, the R33 GTR. I know what you're already gonna say. Get the R32 GTR, it's actually Godzilla. Or just wait a few years and get the R34, which is basically a PlayStation on wheels, and is a proper supercar slaying monster. But actually, this less loved middle child might be the ideal deal. You see, the R33 isn't widely regarded as a halo car of Nissan's performance, like the R32 and the R34 and the R35 that followed it. And it's for that reason that we think that the R33 generation deserves a little bit of respect for carrying its name despite pretty much no one caring through the mid-90s. The R33 featured the same inline-six and all-wheel drive platform that was made famous by the R32, but was further tweaked and improved to keep up with its competition. The looks were also massively updated, and it's arguable about whether they looked better or not, but they were definitely more modernized, giving this GTR generation a more contemporary look that still looks pretty good today. And there was good reason behind a lot of these changes. They were made to keep up with the Group A regulations of the time. So, you know, changes because race car, good changes. And no matter what you think of the outside of it, inside it still has that RB26 DETT, which means you have untapped resources when it comes to modifying. Serious supercar slaying numbers are not hard to achieve on this platform. There are RB26s out there pushing close to the 1,000 horsepower mark. That paired with the stout all-wheel drive system that the R33 GTR came with means that you are ready to smoke most supercars off the line, and probably around the track. Thanks to being in the shadow of its younger and older brothers, the R33 generation GTR has not hit the appreciation rocket ship yet. A decent R33 GTR right now will run you between 35 and 40K out of Japan. Add some import fees on top of that, and you have a great performing Japanese JDM power icon that you can keep stock, and maybe it'll appreciate and earn you some money in a few years, or modify the hell out of and slay all your friends in Ferraris. Either way, the R33 GTR is a fantastic choice for the money. Now the last car on our list is going to come as a little bit of a surprise. Let's call it an honorable mention. I'm not going to do the dance. We couldn't make a list about JDM tuning icons without including a Honda or an ACURA, but you all know about the Civic. Why pick the obvious choice? The less obvious choice is the ACURA INTEGRA. And I know what you're already thinking, why didn't he say Type R? Well, because the word's out on the Type R. The prices of a used Type R right now are insane. So instead of diving into buying a really expensive Type R, let's talk about how you can get Type R performance from something for a fifth the price. Because even if you're not getting the Type R model, you're still getting a legendary VTEC powered B-Series motor in an Integra, which at most trim levels made about 140 horsepower and 127 foot-pounds of torque, which, yes, is nothing close to the rest of the cars on this list. But also, the Integra only weighed about 2,400 pounds. That's like Miata weight. But you're still not talking about a super fast car yet. You need to make some crazy power out of that little Honda 4-pot. And that is where the tuning community shines the brightest. You see, this little Integra came out right as the Fast and the Furious franchise was just getting started. And it was in that movie for a good reason. Anyone who owned a Honda in the 90s, or even the early aughts, can tell you that you can make serious power out of these motors. And for that reason, it deserves a spot on this list. Now, right now, as I film this, the used car market is a little crazy, so prices are a little high, but that doesn't mean that the ACURA INTEGRA is out of your price range. We were able to find an incredibly clean example with only 54,000 miles on it for only 12 grand. Buy that, build that motor, or swap in the Type R motor, and you have one hell of a fun car for like 15 grand. So that's it. That's our list of some of the most fun Japanese cars that'll give supercars a run for their money. Which one on this list was your favorite, or which one did we forget? I don't really need to tell you, but let us know down below. And while you're down there, give us a like, hit the little subscribe button, turn on the little bell because it makes a nice sound. Actually, I don't think it does make a sound. Either way, we're gonna keep hitting you with content pretty much every other day. And if you're new here, I'm the Squid. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep living the ideal lifestyle. I'm out of here.